Hey friends, I am Amy Brand and this is Jennifer Huber and we are NAMI Coastal Mississippi. And today, Jennifer, I've asked you to be able to come on and share a little bit about like what does NAMI mean to you and how did your journey begin?
Well, the journey began um, with NAMI support groups, going to a family support group. Now, I'm not a joiner. I'm usually a leader, and I thought, well, I don't need that stuff, right? Like I can figure this out. And so I have a girlfriend that I had shared with that our daughter was really struggling, and we were doing all the things we knew to do. We reached out to insurance companies, we reached out to local professionals, we were trying to find a therapist that worked, and you know we we're she was really involved in church. It wasn't that we weren't looking for other resources. And then I was just exhausted and felt like I don't know what else to do. So, can this hurt? No. And this was a while ago. So NAMI used to have, this was in the newspaper. They would have little, when the newspaper would give nonprofits like free little line ads. And so it always said, NAMI support group, family support group, NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, just so we recap that. But so I called the phone number and I thought, I don't even know what I'm going to say, you know? And they didn't answer, and I left a voicemail, and it was a local leader, and I think that was my message. I need help, but I don't know what I'm doing. And she probably called me back like maybe 10 minutes later, and she was a lovely woman. This was in Maine. And she said, "It's okay. We know what you need. Just show up." And I thought, oh my goodness, if somebody else knows what I need because I don't, that's where I need to be, right?
Yeah.
So, family support group was where my NAMI journey started. And going to family support group, the thing I think that was most compelling for me is there was no judgment, none. And I felt judged all the time by providers and people that we were going to for resources. And it was like, well, why can't you take care of your kid? Why can't you fix this? I had hundreds of employees I already took care of. And I was thinking the same thing. Why can't I take care of my kid? What is wrong? Right. And so there was no judgment. And it was all about really forgiving myself, rejecting guilt that wasn't mine to carry, right? And I was in a room of people that had walked that path. It's peers, it's other family members, it's wives or husbands or moms or dads or, siblings, people that have walked that journey and have empathy and understand what that journey is and don't judge you at all for the decisions that you've made because you did the best you could with what you had at the time. And then they bring resources to you. And sometimes it's as simple as, learning how to handle your emotions. Or it might be as great as taking the 8-week family to family class. Or it could be a simple form that's a mental health directive to share with your loved one. There's tools and resources. And, for us, this has been a 17-year journey. And I'm still learning every day. At first I was going for our daughter, Now I go for me, right? I still support my daughter, no question. Um, but now I have tools and skills that, because truthfully, we all have some mental health concerns, right? Some days we're in really good places, other days we're not. And so some days I have to pick up those tools for myself, right? And so the journey started truly with family support groups. And then it's led to family, which is an amazing 8-week class. And I will tell you, my husband participates in nothing. I mean, nothing. And he went to that class. He went for 8 weeks and made the commitment. And it was life changing for him as well. Learning new tools. How do we talk to our daughter? How do we support her? Um, and then from there, I've done a lot of training with crisis intervention officers or first responders. I've lobbied on Capitol Hill. Um, help you. We run the support group here together locally. I've run groups in Maine, Las Vegas. I'm on the state board. I get to train other family to family trainers, right? So now I get to give back because it had such a positive impact on our life and still does today, right? So eliminating stigma, awareness, advocacy, education, all the things NAMI does, and they're free.
Right. Right. So all of the things, that, when you go to the doctor, they're not free. when, when you go to all the educators and all of the things trying to find solutions, they're definitely not free, and the time commitment. And so, what I heard in your story is that you really didn't want to go.
Mm-mm.
It was out of, I have tried everything that I know to try, and I need something more. I need other people that in a community that literally hears me, sees me, understands, and that we can walk through that and celebrate the wins. And then, when we're in crisis and being able to support through that, like, who do you call otherwise? Like, it's just 911, or yes, now we have 988. And it's so funny, you're never going to let me live that down. I'm like, how do you dial 988? I'm like, you're like 911. I'm like, oh, okay. So I really didn't even have the mindset to think, well, what happens then? Well, then you're on the phone with someone that is lived experiences, that is a peer that has the ability and the training to be able to support in a place they're not in crisis, but they have been. Right?
Correct.
And what better way is to be able to learn from lived experiences, not because have a textbook that you've, learned about the brain, which I think is super important. Don't get me wrong, that you've gone to school and you've learned how to teach English, right? Or whatever the case may be. So, like, for here, we've like literally lived experiences and living with that. So our peers and our family members, and some of us are both, right?
Right.
And so we get to understand that. So I love what you said is you're still, now you're coming for you. And I think that's so important. It's like, it's words, but it means something when you know that you're not alone.
Hmm.
Like, the journey that you're walking through, there is hope. And I believe, Jennifer, if you didn't show up as a leader, then how could we look? I got my hair standing up. Is how do we have that hope without the lived experiences, without the success that you have shared? And it was like this, woo, right? And sometimes it still is.
Correct. Right. Yes. I had my daughter is grown. She's doing very well. She has a great job. She, um, you know, And recently she was selling a house and I wanted to support her. Well, I'm a realtor, so I know what I'm doing, right? It's,
Right.
but I'm not her professional. I'm still her mom in that role, right? And so I had to have awareness in having the conversation that it was difficult for her to ask for help, right? And I needed to say to her, let me carry this weight for you. It's not your job, right? This is a tool I can pick up and carry for you. I can't carry your mental illness. This I can do. And I want to do it, right? And so I had to be able to know how to speak that to her, that she could hear that. And when she was willing to release that, you know, give her the gratitude and the applause that was what she needed to hear, that it was okay to have someone come beside you sometimes and help you through that, right?
Mhm.
And so I could never have done that 10 years ago, you know, or even maybe 5 years ago. It's a constant growth thing of being aware and still listening and learning and hearing when to use certain tools and what's going to be useful for the person, not what's for me. How can I be most helpful in that situation, right?
Well, and as you speak that, not only for your daughter, who's now an adult, who is very successful and lives with a mental illness and in recovery, um, but also for the families that you talk to on an everyday basis. As a real estate agent, a real estate investor, a real estate, professional, a lender, you talk to people all day, every day, and the tools that you gain in growing in NAMI is like invaluable, and it's all free. It's like, wow, I just picked up that tool, I didn't even realize it was in my tool belt. Wow, I just put a new tool in my tool belt and I use that. Or it's like being around other people that are investing in themselves so they can show up to be their best self, right, for their family. And I believe awareness, right? Education, advocacy, all of the things that NAMI offers. So sometimes you need the education. How many times do we read a book and then go, like, oh man, I'm going to pick that book up again? And then I read it again and it comes from a totally different perspective, or I pull out what I needed at the time. With NAMI, we have resources, right? So it might not be what NAMI specifically offers, but it may be a resource that
Mhm.
we're connected to. And so it's like, I know at times for me, it has been overwhelming. It's like, what do I need to do first, second, third? And I want all the answers right now. And I want it done yesterday. And sometimes it's just part of the process. So I love what you said was, hey, it was in the newspaper back then. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to pick up this phone because I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I don't know. I have literally done the best I could with what I've had, and my best efforts got me here. So now I need, right? Well, I don't even know what I need. I just need something. And so, but you had to be willing, right, to pick up the phone. And the person on the other end, right, had to be willing to be able to share their story. They had to invest in themselves in order to give it to you. And so that's what I love about the family support group. What you said is it starts there. Now, can you tell me just a little bit? I know we're going to wrap in here in just a minute, but like once you got into family support and you like, wow, okay, I'm not alone. I'm going to show up and we're going to walk through this journey together it was probably in crisis mode for you. And then once you got kind of like next step, and again, if you're like me, our crisis can go like this, and then in recovery can look like this, and then like this, right? So but from that next step, like from family support, then like what was your next step after that?
I mean, I have continued with family support for literally 17 years. Our next step was family to family. And that, like I said, is an 8-week class that is really in depth of, okay, you're learning what is this mental illness? What happens with medications? What tools do I need to use? What's going on in my loved one's mind? There's a simulation that's very awakening. It's most people come to tears. I mean, it's just a realization of, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how much of a struggle this is every day, right? Um, it prepares you for the next crisis. We hope it never comes, right? Yet, if and when it does, you have new tools that are you're prepared for what to do. In that first crisis, we have no idea. So, just like a heart attack, right? So you can't prepare for a heart attack, okay? Well, we don't prepare necessarily for a mental health crisis. So
Mhm.
now we're aware and we're prepared for the next, just like you would be with a heart attack. You've had a heart attack, you've had heart surgery, you're better, you're on medication, maybe, you have some diet, you're checking in with your doctor on a regular basis, right? What are the things that you do to take care of yourself? There's no guarantee you're not going to have another heart attack. You're now prepared, right?
Mhm.
What's next? And you have people and doctors and things in place, right? So now we're going to do the same thing for mental health. When that crisis potentially comes again, who are you calling? What's your circle of support? Who do you call? How do you take care of you at the same time that you're taking care of your loved one?
Mhm.
Because that's
Mhm.
really important too.
Mhm. You got to put your mask on first too before you can help someone else, like in that airplane, right? And so, you know, when I think of mental illness, I think of mental health too. We're like we all have mental health. And then there's an illness, and it could come with a diagnosis, right? And then educating myself on like what does that even mean? Because if you had, say, you used a heart attack, I usually use diabetes just because of Addison. Like, I don't even know what diabetes was. Like, sugar diabetes, like, what is that? Right. And I was like, what do I even do with this? Well, then I had to learn and then continue to practice, right? And then I had to go back to my support team and learn a little, do a little, learn a little, do a little, right? And so like it could be as simple as depression. It could be as simple, and I say simple, but I'm just saying, like, the word, we've heard of depression, right? But what does really that look like? Well, I think I know NAMI does a fantastic job, even with NAMI basics, just understanding, like, you may see symptoms, but you may not know, and you don't have to have a diagnosis. You just have to know, like, I mean, you could be the parent, you could be the wife, you could be the sister, you could be, mom, dad, brother, whatever. I'm just saying for me, you can notice like something is just quite not right and not have like knowledge of it. And then having knowledge of that, you could be a teacher and
Yeah.
you change lives, and so as a teacher you may or may not have been trained in that area, and that you want to grow. Again, it's all free. And so, how many lives could you change, just of being aware? And then, because I'm aware, what do I do? And then, okay, now that I'm doing, did I do it right? Well, there's no right or wrong. It's just learn a
Right.
little, do a little, and you're doing the best you can with what you have. Now, Jennifer, when you first started with NAMI and the support groups, and then you went into family to family and you learned, and I'm sure that you went to your next level because that's who you are and you want to learn and to grow. Well, you probably learned a little and then you were aware and you're like, okay, now what do I do? And I'm sure that more likely than not, you probably went back to your providers and said, oh my goodness, I learned this. And then your providers probably said, oh my gosh, I need to send more families over there so they could learn. And then now we are starting to really change lives on the inside, right? And so that's what NAMI really, when you introduced me to NAMI, I was like, NAMI, what is that? And so I didn't know at all. Like I just was like, okay, I'll show up because I just didn't know. And then after I got in, I was like, what, Jennifer, why didn't you tell me about that? Like, did you know this? And I think we do this a lot with each other. You find things, new things, things that maybe a new tool that you didn't weren't aware of or you didn't need at the time and now you do, maybe a real estate agent that you're helping to grow, maybe a family that you're talking through. Like there's all kind of things that you learn along the way. And so, but in the beginning, you just showed up for your daughter.
hmm And
Now,
I love how you spoke about, the doctors, even just a regular general practitioner doctor. You take your kid to the pediatrician, right? You know, they don't, a regular doctor, pediatrician, general practitioner, they don't get a lot of hours in mental health, right? When they're going through education. It's like really limited. And same with nutrition, it just so they need new tools too. NAMI does have a specific signature program where we do go in and they get CE credits for to teach to providers, and those are for medical providers. And then we have CIT, crisis intervention training. That was something that I was really passionate. I still am today. That was my passion in the beginning, was really working with police departments, fire departments, any type of first responder, is they didn't know how to approach the situation. Now NAMI has this fabulous CIT. Officers go 40 hours, they get to hear from a family member, they get to hear from a peer, that true lived experience and what's that like. And for me, it was even after the crisis, right? And your person, husband, wife, daughter, kid, whatever, um, is removed and either potentially has to go to jail, has to go to the hospital, whatever that is, that family member that made that phone call, that is such a big decision. And in your mind and in your heart, it's the right thing because you can't keep them safe, right? So but to do that phone call, you're taking something to the next level. There's this awareness of OMG, what now? Right? And so then this family is left with a pile of what? Guilt, shame, um, questioning. Did I do the right thing? Did I not do the right? Like, we know it's the right thing, right? Everybody has to stay safe. That's the first priority, is safety. I love being that support because I've been there and I am fine and happy to hold that place for that family. And even if I can't do anything, I can be there.
And
Just
that a
don't
lot
feel
of times is all
alone.
that's needed.
Yeah, they're not alone. Mhm.
Yeah. And I think that, sorry guys, this happens, right? And it's okay. um, little emotions. That's what we're all about, learning those feelings and emotions and what we do with those. So thank you for your grace on that, because lived experiences, as you can tell, Jennifer has lived through that and supported me through that, and I allowed her to do that, which was a big thing, because sometimes as families we ask for help, and when it just those expectations and it looks a little different, and we're really limited in certain here in Mississippi, we're really limited in the mental health side of things. But it's really, really a breath of fresh air when you have you, Jennifer, to just know like you don't have all the answers, but I now have someone to call, and I don't have to explain like everything that's going on. It's just in a moment, like, hey. And what and now getting through that crisis, and so to be able to give back. The one thing that came to mind too that I spoke here recently, there was an investor, a real estate investor, who had not really gone through mental health like you and I have lived experiences. And so it was a house that had literally had a lot of destruction, and it appeared to be maybe fist or maybe some things in the house. And my first thing, it's just perspective, right? So my first thing is, oh, they may have had someone that lives with an emotional dysregulation, or someone that lived with a mental illness, or something that had happened. That would be my first thing. And it wasn't a thought in his mind because it wasn't aware, that a family like yours, a family like mine, when dysregulated, and it could be many different types of, mental illness. But at the time, it's something is going on that is dysregulated. And then how do we help? How do we serve? What is our role in that part? And so for you, being able to gain the tools and understanding, you can see it with a different pair of lens from lived experiences, but also other people get to learn from your lived experiences, and other people get to learn from my lived experiences. And so, thank you for being willing to share, because without you sharing your story, without you lobbying on Capitol Hill, without you investing in yourself, without you still continue to this day through the recovery, then I wouldn't be here. And so
And
it
look
goes
at
to both
you,
of
right? Like, look at you. And I do want to make sure that you are aware as well, right?
us.
You were like, nah, in the beginning, nothing's going to work. I've tried everything too. I've talked to so many people. I had been there also. Today, look at you, 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
You now serve on the board, you're advocating, you have new tools, you've been through some of the classes, you're running a support group, you went and spoke at a school, right? We're speaking at Spiritual Care Network. That growth for you is amazing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I want you to see that in yourself and be aware of that. And even your family, they
Mm.
have grown as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was messy.
Hot messy action, y'all.
Right?
Just keep showing up. And thank you for, pointing that out. And I received that. And it always, it wasn't that way. And sometimes it's hard. You get kind of hardened too, because every time that you're trying and it's a closed door and it's, hey, been there, done that, I already know what's going to happen. But sometimes having someone to come alongside of you and believing in you, even when you don't believe in yourself or don't believe in the system or don't believe in the process. And you're like, hey, me too. I was there too. And here's what I did. Not that it was perfect, no hot, messy action, but literally, trying it and then having someone to come alongside of you. I say if everybody lived in an IEP world, it would be a much better place because here's the instructions, and here's what happens. And then you're measuring it and then having goals. Well, I think that is exactly what NAMI offers is
Mhm.
here's support, here's education, here's resources, here's in crisis, here's all of the things that I needed that if my doctor would have known about it, right? And then this is what I love, love, love that you did is you have this bookmark. And you'd be like, oh my gosh, I've heard about this bookmark forever. But this bookmark, right? It's here, it's live. Oh my gosh, we finally got the bookmark. Love, love, love. Thanks to you, right? The 988 dial 911 988, y'all. Okay. And but here is a simple QR code that I carry these in my purses. Literally, I have a box right here. I am out in my purse because I'm in a restaurant and there's someone that I see. There's someone that I hear. I'm literally at the bank and someone's family member that I get to have this and go, oh, let me give this to you. And these are all the resources that we have for peer support as well as family support. And we're still growing, and some of these are in person, and some of them are virtual only, and some of them are hybrid. So it's both. And so now, there is on the back, y'all, it says there is hope. And I can tell you that that is the truth. And because this is in my purse, Jennifer, that's in your purse. And then when we speak, we're speaking at the college here soon. When we get to, get the opportunity to speak to CIT officers, I went to, Dwayne and I went to, Hattiesburg to a conference thanks to you. And it was like so eye opening of all of the things that, at first you go, I wish I had a known. And now that I go, man, I get the opportunity to know. And because I know, now I can do. And so it wasn't always that way, man. I mean, literally didn't have anything left in me. But now today, I have this little card, and there have been many a times where friends or family or someone go, I know who you need to call. And then I literally don't know what to do. And we did this the other day as I was like, I called you and I wasn't sure. You're like 988. And then I followed up. They had spoken to someone in 988 and felt so much better. And in that the heaviness of that call, I felt that too, but I carried the weight that wasn't mine to carry, right? And now that I have the resources, that I have the confidence, I'm not alone in this journey either, because I was trying to change the world by myself, and but now I have a group, a community of like-minded individuals, been there, done that, and have resources. And so that's what, I get to do this with you and for other family members, so that when someone asks me, hey, what did you do? I at times I couldn't share, like, well, you can't do what I did, right? I went in hiding, we stayed at home, we didn't do anything, I quit my job, like it was crazy. And but now I'm like, oh, here, we meet on the first Monday of every week. I mean, of every month. We will totally add more resources and time to locally when it's needed. Um, and then I'm able to give a bookmark. So I literally want to go to every one of my doctors. You know why? Because they text me. They literally will say, hey, Amy, who are you seeing for this one? They did it for Addison for diabetes because it's not a lot of, specialists here. Who are you seeing for your psychologist, your psychiatrist? And I say who, but there's my whole family, right? Who did you go for the addiction recovery? 9 times did y'all do that? Like, who did you see, for helping you with your disability for Alden? Who did you see to help you with that, I was so nervous when he was 18 to make that phone call because, oh my gosh, like he doesn't belong in jail. He doesn't belong in prison. And so it's really important for all the advocating that we did to not, right, to have him where he could get the help that he needs and my whole entire family. And so there are times where mental illness is invisible, right? And so when you could see with a different pair of lenses, it becomes visible. And then when you can see it, what do you do with that? And I mean, I'm just Jennifer, I'm just saying like, oh my gosh, if I could just scream from the mountaintops, right? And NAMI, because this is why it exists, is other people just like you, other families just like you, came to a table and said something has got to change. And so that's what we did. And so now we're showing up as leaders for the our support group and being able to teach and facilitate for CIT officers to help when they come in to our homes. What's really, you have a different pair of lenses. If we're in the colleges and they're literally in their textbook and they go, I only had so many hours. I was not prepared for this. This is what I wanted to go to. This is the difference I wanted to make, but I wasn't prepared. And I think that that is, where we have that today. So thank you guys for joining us today. Thank you, Jennifer. I really appreciate your time and energy. And I look forward to seeing you guys in our family support group or our next Lunch and Learns. Have a great day.